Well, hello, we're live tonight,
Hello out
and
there.
we're enjoying this beautiful weather. It's been a gorgeous day today. I hope you all have had a great day. Um, we're here again, heart to heart with the Sawyers, and hopefully you guys will chime in soon. Um, I want to start with a scripture, if you don't mind, and this is the Easter holiday, so I know everybody's kind of thinking about that, and a lot of people are focusing on how Jesus was crucified and raised and all of this. And then we got Easter eggs and bunnies. I don't know where that comes in. But anyway, in Galatians 2:20 says, I am crucified with Christ. Nevertheless I live. Yet not I, but Christ live. And the life which I now live in the flesh, I live by the faith of the Son of God. Hello, Quajo.
Hi, Joe.
So Easter is not just the resurrection day for Hello, Vern. It's not just the resurrection day for Jesus, but it's our resurrection day.
Yes, it is.
And it also says in Romans 6, it says, therefore we are buried with him by baptism into death, that like as Christ was raised up from the dead by the glory of the Father, even so we should also walk in the newness of life. So this is our resurrection day as well.
Mm-hmm.
And resurrection to me doesn't mean so much coming back from the dead, although it does mean that. What it actually means to me is that we've been raised above certain things.
Mm-hmm.
And so talking about the eternal self, when we talk about that, it means transcending a lot of the lower vibrational lifestyles that we've been involved in. And so to me, the resurrection means I'm going to ascend, transcend, and it's going to be a higher life. And so that eternal self, you could call that your higher self. Your higher self. So this is our resurrection season, our resurrection day.
Yes, it is. It is. I think that we should make our push our transcendent identity into a area of opening up ourselves to the complete full truth of the death, burial, and resurrection
Mm-hmm.
of not only Jesus but us.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of people that I've mentioned it to in Galatians 2:20, they seem to think that it's metaphorically speaking, or it might be just a positional thing. But in the eternal self, we were also participators, but not only participators, but actually involved uh, in it just as much and as powerful as Jesus was. So when you go to the cross, if you look at salvation, don't stop at just his dying.
So we're participants, aren't
Yeah,
we?
and I mean, what I'm saying, what we have found out at 50 some years of being this and meditating and messing with this, we found out this was a literal experience for every human being on the face of the earth.
Yes.
It is like our president is the president of the United States. He's not the president for individualities. Yet he is, but yet he is universal.
It's for the entire country.
For the entire country.
Yes.
Now, in my note, I wrote here that the eternal self is not or is untouched by events good or bad. Now, listen to this. In reference to the Galatians 2:20, there's a Eastern terminology or a correct terminology of Lucifer or Satan and the dark world. The Luciferic principle, you'd have to investigate into it. One of the things I've said in the classes on Tuesday night at 7, you need to investigate more into the definition or the expression of eternal life beyond and before salvation, because you're not getting the full impact of Easter, you're not getting the full impact of salvation until it is cleared up spiritually and physically cleared up in your minds about your true identity. Your true identity does not start when you become a believer. Right. Your true identity is before Adam, in the heart and the mind of God, before anything. Yes. In my note here, I wrote, The ego-luciferic principle is what causes the Christians or the believers to go after the power of God and salvation and accepting Jesus Christ without fully knowing who they are. First, they need to find out first, who are we before salvation? And we've been taught the Luciferic principle that we were sinners, we were separated from God, and that is not true.
Well, and then too, the scriptures also tell us that he is a father of spirits.
That's
that
right.
means all of us. And in Acts it says that we are all his offspring. That means every last one of us. And that passage of scripture did not come from Jesus saying it or the church, the disciples saying it. That was from some people who didn't even know who God was. They had to the unknown God and they were worshiping him. But and they also were saying we are his offspring. So every last one of us is a child of God.
The real power of God is not given. It is no need for power when one finds out about the eternal self. There's no need for power because
that is the power.
That is encapsulated in the beingness.
Yes.
The mind and the Luciferic principle has stole this portion of eternal identity from the life or the experience of the believers or the unbelievers.
Now, it is true that we're not sinners, but it is also true that we've been misguided and misdirected, and we've misidentified ourselves. We've identified ourselves with everything but what we truly are.
Let's just say we are sinners. Let's say that we are born in sin and iniquity from our mother's womb. Let's say that none is righteous. All have sinned and come short of the glory. Let's say that but it still does not remove the fact that before any of this, we existed. Before the Bible came, we existed in the mind of God as an eternal being. Now, if you get over into the physical side, over into the flesh, or what you might call carnal mind, I guess so. Nobody knows. If you get over that in that area, you would say you didn't exist on earth until you got here physically. I'll tell you something else too. The mind of thinking was not in a baby. It did not. It is, and then when we come out of the womb, we come from inside of each other, just like our eternal self come from inside of God, and we all come from inside of each other. We did not know or come into a voice or a thinking mind until our thinking mind parents transferred that over into our identity. The whole earth is filled with the identity that we are the thinkers, and that's not true. And you're born again, at the born again self, okay, you want to talk about that? Let's just say the born again experience. And we got to get the mind of Christ. You got to study the word. You got to get all this stuff in you in the born again, being transformed by the renewal of the mind. That does not carry any weight beyond the eternal self, because before the renewing of the mind, you still were before any of this.
And I always said too, the renewing of the mind does not mean cramming more information into your head and getting a lot of Bible knowledge. That's not renewal.
No,
that's cramming.
But
renewal is taking it back, taking the mind back to its original state. Taking it back to its original state, it was at infancy. Its original state was just a blank slate, not so much not thinking, but it was a blank slate in the sense that it wasn't holding on to stories, it wasn't holding on to beliefs, it wasn't holding on to preferences and to dislikes or likes, it wasn't holding on to aspirations, it wasn't holding on to any of those things. It was just a clear mind. And so renewing of the mind is clearing it, not so much putting more into it.
The renewal of the mind is the mind thinking to itself that it is the you that's thinking and changing its own self and its own mind to be nothing else more than the mind. Who you are as the eternal self does not have to be renewed. But you got in the Bible, you got these
you got a head.
You got a head.
You got a head on that shoulder. So
we got these famous.
Gotta do something with that.
Yeah, we got these famous manipulative, controlling people that's teaching the book, teaching the Bible, and they say, well, I'll stake my life on the book. Your life is not to be staked on paper and ink. It is to be staked on who you really are. The power of you is who you are before the book.
Yes.
You need to investigate this that we're speaking. Don't look, we're not on here to argue with you about the Bible or to debate with you about whether it is written of God and it is the word of God.
Sharing our hearts.
We're sharing this because we have discovered, this week I have discovered some of the most amazing things about our true identity as eternal beings. Go to the 16th chapter of Luke if you want to believe the book. Just don't pick that out. Jesus himself was raised. Go to the book. You'll find out that when a person leaves their body, even though he is a body, but there's more to you than just being a body.
Sure. You are that. That's an aspect of you, but that is not the totality of you. I was out just a moment ago getting some flowers. I went to Walmart to get some flowers, and everybody, well, mostly of our color, were in there trying to buy clothes and things for Easter because that's what they were so focused on. So Easter has, for some people, taken it's become a fashion show season instead of the actual season of resurrection. And I started out in the beginning of this session talking about the resurrection. This is our resurrection day. So this is what we're celebrating right now. And going back to what you said earlier, all of us, those of us who are listening here, unless you're from a foreign country, you were born into Christianity.
That's right.
You didn't have a choice. You had to go that way because that's what everybody around you was doing. And even if they didn't go to church, even if they didn't consider themselves Christian, that's what they believed they should have done.
That's right.
So
that's right.
You had no choice. But now what we're saying is you are beyond just a Christian religion or a Buddhist religion or a Muslim religion, any religion. You are beyond any religion, and your ancestry is God himself. You are not related only to your body. Your body is family. You are related to God himself. You, in fact, are God's son. Jesus isn't the only son that God has.
You are a son and daughter of God.
Jesus wasn't the only child that God has. And when we say child, we simply mean that consciousness that God was in a human body, and it was called the Son of God. But Jesus never called himself God. He called himself Son of Man. So he was fully human, although we actually put him on a pedestal, but I don't think being on a pedestal is what Jesus wanted. I think he wanted to show us an example of what we could be.
That's right. Our true calling was us coming to this dimension, into the dream world of a story that made every being in this dimension believe that they were body, mind, consciousness.
Yes.
And when we got here, we got trapped. But the reason why we came here was to experience an opposite. Every opposite reveals an opposite. The opposite of you as a
like light reveals darkness.
Light reveals darkness. That's right.
Well, you wouldn't know darkness if you hadn't seen light. So it's the same with everything.
One reveals the other.
I wouldn't know you were short if I didn't put a tall man beside you.
See, there you go.
I'm short too, so I can talk. I can talk.
Our highest quality of self is the God Holy Spirit self.
Yes.
We have always known God, but there's a block. There are many blocks. Do you know?
When you say we've always known God, is there a part of us that's known God?
Yeah.
Not so much consciously in my brain.
Not the monkey mind.
Yeah.
And you know what? I'm gonna say this.
And I think most of us as children, we had some kinds of we had often communications with God, not formal communications, but I remember praying when I was a little girl. Not formal praying, but I remember talking to God when I was a little girl and believing God was around and listening.
Our highest quality of self is the God identity. Now, before we got into church and got saved and heard the preacher preach and all that kind of stuff. You know what? My wife and I spent thousands of dollars on investigating into the truth of beingness, our eternal self. And we
Yeah,
started out.
some of it's behind us now.
Yeah, we got all these books here,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't hardly touch them anymore because I found out that what I was looking for was me.
Yeah.
I thought I was looking for God, which I was, but I wanted to find out, was Jesus real? So he appeared to me.
Yeah,
And to her.
Because we had to have that.
We had to have that.
Yeah,
Everybody out there may not have to have that.
Right.
I don't know, whatever melts your butter, you know.
But it was for us that we had to have that, because I don't think we would have survived some of the things that we've been through had we not had
we had to have
experience.
We had to have kind of like what Moses in the book said, the burning bush experience. So we had to have the actual appearing of the tangible substance body of Jesus to us together in order for us to go on into this. Now, ask the question again: who am I? What am I? And why am I? And when those two questions are presented as inquisitionings, you will find out that you cannot stop being your real self just because you don't see it in the book, or you didn't find it in the book, or you didn't hear it preached to you. You know, how can we hear without a preacher how can he preach unless he's been sent? You've been sent to reveal the true self of your eternalness to everybody you meet. Now, the preaching of the gospel is who you are. You are that. If anything comes outside of that or in the front of that, it's okay. But you need to be settled, absolutely cleared about your true spirituality, involved in what happens to you. Now, we're going to have to go to a eulogy, funeral on Monday, and they are going to look at a body, and they're going to look at it, and their minds are going to be set into a sleeping state that this body is the end of this person. And even though the preacher will say we're going to get to heaven and we're going to walk around, they will pep rally us at a funeral, but they won't tell us that that person, that being that was in that body, is right there in the service, at the eulogy, at the funeral, watching everybody's reaction. If they're not there, they will be around the family, and that's what happened to Jesus at his resurrection. That is what's going to be going on in this funeral Monday and many others around the country. They don't cease to exist because you can't see them.
Right. Joan, hey Joan, how are you? She's asking if we would do a series of recordings on CDs. Joan, we would love to. Right now, we don't have the capability of that. We don't have the equipment for that. So it might not come that way, but you feel free to join us every Thursday night. We're here right here every Thursday night, live streaming just for your benefit. And if you have questions or something that you need to ask, and feel free to do that as well. We'll try to address them as much as possible, and we try to address everything we see as it comes up on screen. Hey Vanessa, it's good to see you, sweetheart. I'm glad you're doing well. So Joan, just stay with us and keep listening, okay?
Joan, if we give you permission, I don't know how you would do it, take these off of YouTube or Facebook and use them.
But now we do have a YouTube channel. Cornerstone Life Center has a YouTube channel where if you have capability of downloading any of those, you can put those on CD if you choose to. That would be a great way to get it.
But let me explain something to you, Ms. Joan. If you use this information by our permission, the people that you give these to, this dimension in this world is designed by the ego and the false self as an energy. They will fight you, and the reason why it's not the demonic forces, it's the Luciferic principle that anybody in this world or this dimension that finds out how to wake up to this eternal self, those that are asleep will want to try to put you back to sleep.
Yeah, now having said all that, just be selective as to who you let hear it, okay?
And it's not to say that
but we are public.
Yeah,
so
we are
anybody
public.
can
It's not to say that I think the Lord is telling me to give it to everybody. I think everybody needs to know this. There are some people, there are some beings that still believe that they are persons that have been sent here to fight for the gospel or to fight for the Bible, and we're not in that.
Right, but I don't want you to be afraid either. So what we just be selective as to who you let hear it, especially if there are those who are not open to what we're sharing on here now. But although we are public, it's anybody can hear it.
Yeah.
And so if you want to do that, that's fine.
There are some people that would used to allow us to come in and share certain things, but because we don't say it like they, we don't manipulate people and control. I tell you one thing I found out. I found out after investigating this that they are leaders who use the Bible and use their teaching to control people and to manipulate them into keeping them in their church and keeping them in a certain degree of lesser information about themselves in order to keep them captivated into a club.
Yeah, but that's another subject.
Yeah.
We're here to talk about your eternal self.
Yeah, but the eternal self, you cannot stop being this eternal self just because you lose thought of it, or just because you lose fellowship with people that do it. You do not lose the eternal self. I heard somebody say backslide. The only backsliding or anything like that at all that occurs is you do that in a second. If like we talking on scene on live here, if my mind was to wander off to something else and I get off and forget about what we're talking about, that's backsliding in a sense of distractions.
Right. Joan says here, she said it would just be for her, and she's been battling in her mind, and this is what she needs to hear to set her free. I'm glad you said that, because what we focus on a lot in our sessions, and I don't know if you have availability to come to us on Tuesday nights at 7 or Sunday at 10. But what we focus on is how to understand the nature of the mind and what you should do with it, how you should deal with it. So we might touch on that a little bit in some of these sessions at some point.
When I found out that I was not the thinker, you're not the thinker, and those things that are going through your mind right now, Miss Joan, is something of an energy. It is an inertia energy that was passed on, and everybody that come into this dimension is plagued with this body mind. Let's say it like this: when you don't want the mind to think, you try to stop it, and yet it still keeps going. And
it actually strengthens it.
Yeah, and I used to wonder, if I am not the mind and I'm not this thinker, who is this and what is this that keeps thinking when I don't want these thoughts? Then I realized that I was not the one doing this, because if I was doing this, I would have stopped it a long time ago. If I am the mind and the thinking, I realized that the mind is insane. It is really insane, but we are not.
And what most of the time when you're battling the mind, what you're battling is old beliefs from some conditionings that you had, some life experiences that you had, old beliefs or old fears. And this is the thing: the mind always projects into the future or into the past. If you stay in the present moment, you don't have quite as much trouble with the mind. But if you allow it to predict what's going to happen in the future, you'll end up with fear and anxiety. If you allow it to go back into the past, to the memories that you had, you would face dread and regrets and anger of things that did happen that you think should not have happened. So it's best not to follow the mind into the future or into the past. Do your best to stay present in the moment.
I just several months ago, I had the bariatric surgery, and in bariatric surgery, weight loss surgery, we had to go to classes. And we have to sit in session with the nutritionist and with some of the people that was in my circle at the time of the surgery. They come in and asking questions about the addiction to food. And then I found out that the addiction to food is not the eternal self. It is the programming that's in the mind that's coming through the subconscious.
Yeah. It's not your stomach hungry.
No, it's not. It's the monkey.
It's the mind that wants to eat.
Listen, Miss Joan, I want you to hear this, because we haven't seen you in a while, and I thank your God self for allowing you to be able to hear this physically or see us online. We were teaching this when you were with us at first, but some people have to go away and then come back and get it different ways. There's so many ways that the eternal self. Now, I want you to know this. We all are eternal selves, individualized. But in the individualized identity, we are still one eternal self all over the earth, all over the world. And we are the family of eternal selves in billions and billions of identities in one eternal self. There's not many, that's not millions of eternal selves, that's just one.
Yes.
That means that those ideals and thoughts that are coming in your head that you're dealing with, and especially when you get to a certain age, because of the change of life, testosterone, estrogen change, and all that, I found out that when you investigate more into who you are, I found out that the eternal self is not the one going through the change, because it is the unchanging self, and it is not moved or touched by anger, resentment, anxiety, fear, death. There is no touching of this in the pure self. The pure self remains pure. And let me tell you something else, Miss Jones. You were pure before your conditioned mind received Jesus Christ as Lord and Savior.
Have you noticed that the mind it's always trying to make you feel like you're not enough?
Yeah.
Have you noticed that? It's always trying to make you feel as if you're not enough. Hey, Vincent.
Okay. These eternal truths must be investigated. I want to ask the question to some of you, and I made the statement in the class on last Sunday morning. What does the eternal self sound like?
You mean in its conversation?
Does it have a voice? Does it have a way of communicating? Does it exist when we're asleep? Or does it lessen itself because of a storm?
Now, are you speaking of it as something separate and apart from us?
I'm speaking of it in the sense of recognition.
Okay.
Are you ready to recognize? And if you are ready, then are you ready to investigate in what are the signs of the eternal self existing as your real self?
That's a long question.
That's a long question, but it needs to be investigated.
Can you bring it down a little bit, condense it?
Let's investigate, find out what is the eternal self like. What is his character?
What does it look like?
What does it look like? What does it sound like? What would it be like if, let's put it like this, the eternal self is speaking through us in a way, it's like communicating with our dog. She communicates by energy, sound, vibration. She does not make words, but she makes sound.
She communicates. Yes.
That's the way music communicates with sound.
Everything does.
Everything does. So when you ask the question, what does the eternal self look like?
But isn't the eternal self that is speaking all the time?
It may or may not be speaking all the time, based on what Jesus said to Peter in Matthew. He said, "Who do men say that I, the Son of Man, am?" Peter said, "Thou art the Christ, the Son of the living God." And then the next minute, Jesus began to talk about going to the cross and dying, and on the third day being raised. And Peter began to rebuke him, and Jesus said, "Get behind me, Satan." So that means that same channel, that 1 minute was the Father speaking through Peter, changed and become the Luciferic principle that went against Jesus' destiny and purpose going to the cross.
And that happens to us all the time.
That's all the time. It switches.
In other words, we ascend and we fall
right
all
in
the
this
time.
Right in the same body, in the same mind. That's why I tell people all the time, heaven is not a distant place. It is who we are as the eternal self. And hell is not a distant place, because it's who we are not in the same place.
Yes.
Hell is who you are not, contrary to your eternal self. So if you want to find God and you want to understand the eternal self, you can't understand the eternal self without understanding God, because the eternal self and God are in the same class.
Well, I'll tell you what, that's good, because I've come to understand that God is not far from me.
No distance.
And that God is so here.
It is now.
So here.
And so are we.
There is no way for me to get away from, even
no
if
way.
I tried.
No way.
There would be no way for me to get away from God or to miss God. There is absolutely no way, because there is no such thing as separation. In fact, when I experience love, I'm experiencing a lack of separation.
For you,
because love makes me feel, it makes me feel the separation collapse.
The next step from you to God is the next step God took, being you.
When I love someone, when I love you, the separation between us collapses.
Mhm.
So it's love in its absence. It's the absence of love that causes
Separation
separation.
is a lie.
Yes.
Separation from God is an illusion.
Yes.
There's no such thing. How can you be separated from something that is eternal, omnipotent, omnipresent?
Yes.
And look, people say, God ain't in the liquor store. God ain't in the whorehouse. I don't see why not.
Yeah.
If he's omnipotent, hey, that tells me right there that the eternal self is not moved by that. But you being personality, human, earthly minded, you can't handle that because you still believe you all of those things that gets distracted.
Some of us do.
Well, you know,
Yes,
not
some
all
of
of
us
us,
still
but you know,
believe that,
percentage wise.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
so now we're finding out. But now let me tell you something.
So it's living through the heart, isn't it?
The minute that you lose, we turn this off or we go off the air, the Luciferic principle of it's called Meyer, the deceiver. It's like you switch back over. It seems like we got to have something to keep our attention. What I'm trying to say to you on this event here, when you settled in on your true identity, you do not have to, when you fully wake up, you do not have to have a stimulant to keep you there.
Yeah.
You come to the place of maturity that you are that and nothing else but that, even though you go through your daily activities, you never lose sight of it.
So can I, and this is important because especially for those of us who've been in church, especially the kinds of churches where you feel like you got to feel the presence of God, it's important that you learn to live with God, knowing that God is still here, not so much here, but right here where you are is where God is, even when nothing spectacular is happening. When there's no phenomenon, when there's no, because God to me has become stillness. Mm-hmm. God to me has even become emptiness at some points when you feel like, for especially with us when we have to speak or something, oftentimes I'll feel empty, like there's I don't have anything to say. But the moment my mouth opens, it's there. So it's like emptiness has to be there for God to fill it. And so we're afraid of silence. We're afraid of emptiness. But that's the best way to be in order for God. We are proof that God exists. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. We are proof that God exists.
As we're speaking to you, the mind is thinking.
Joan asks, so is Pastor Pearson's doctrine of inclusion correct? We would say yes. Some would disagree with us, Joan, but we say yes, it is. If God is actually love, there is no one excluded. We all started out, in fact, in the Judaic religion, which was Jesus' religion, the religion of the Jews. They didn't start off believing that something was wrong with them, that they were born in sin. That was not their traditional doctrine. They knew they were made in the image of God. They didn't have the belief system that we have in the Christian church, that there's something wrong with me and I need to get fixed. They didn't have that. They came into the knowledge of, I was born and I'm in the image of God, made a little lower than the angels. They didn't have this thing of trying to get rid of sin. So that's why a lot of Jews now do not believe in Jesus Christ, because they don't feel like they need that salvation.
I had a chance to talk to Carlton Pearson on the telephone in the airport before his assistant pastor crossed over or died.
Yeah.
I wanted to bring Carlton Pearson into our sessions, into our class, and he has been to Greensboro, North Carolina, under the auspices of other ministries. But what I don't understand about these guys that were rebuttaling him is that God's eternal love from the eternal self of all of them did not do that to Carlton Pearson's true self.
Right.
I don't understand this manipulative, controlling power that these bishops have, that they feel that God is wanting to kill somebody for them to be right. Then they'll say, well, the Bible said and the Word said. Jesus himself is the living word, and he would not kill Carlton because of what he revealed to Carlton. Why can't we lay all this stuff aside and not? I have people that won't be around me because we're talking like this, and I understand that, but they are not operating out of the pure self because God does not separate us.
Well, I think, and I've said this before, I think that when a person is, well, for the church would say growing in the spirit, but for a person who is transcending all of this earthly stuff and they're beginning to wake up, judgment is the last thing to go in a Christian. It is the last thing to go. Our opinion about everything, our passing judgment on everything, our commenting about everything, that's the last thing to go. And I think that one thing is what keeps a lot of people from waking up, because they can't transcend the judgmentalism.
You can be saved, you can read the Bible and can quote it from rooter to tutor, and do all the necessities that a Christian is supposed to do and still not be awake to your eternal self.
I guarantee if you take a Christian, a Buddhist, a Muslim, a Sufi, whatever other religion, you take them all and you strip them of all of their clergy garments. If they're awake, you won't know one from the other.
That's right.
If they're fully awake, you won't know who is what, because they'll all say the same thing. I have a little book called Oneness, where it's pulled scriptures from every religion that's saying the same thing. So it's not God that's dividing us with all of these religions. It's our understanding and our interpretation of what these things mean, and our need, like you said, our need to have control. I have to have authority so I can have control. And I can't have control if I don't have structure. And so when the structure starts deteriorating, people get scared. They want the structure because they want to be controlled. They don't want to feel out of control.
That's right.
Yeah.
So what I found out with those, I've watched the whole thing about Carlton, and I've talked to him, and I have found nothing to be offended for in dealing with him. The love of God is still there. It's eternal, and it does not change because we don't believe in the Bible.
So it again, yes, we think it's right, but now others would disagree, and that's fine. Right. So it's fine. And Tangie, hey, Rock, it's good to see you guys. Sharon, it's good to have you here.
Yeah, good to have you guys.
So we kind of got off of things a little bit,
but that's okay. I don't think we got off.
Soapbox a little bit. But
I really don't think we got off. I think this all is inclusive in the eternal self. Now, one thing I said again, there is no need to fast and pray to get the gifts of the Spirit to operate through you. Waking up is the power of God. Waking up is the power that causes these abilities to function from a normal, eternal self-identity.
How do you know you're awake? That's a good one for you guys. How do you know you're awake?
Can you guys out there give us some feedback on what do you think and what do you call being awake?
Yeah, what do you think awake is?
I guarantee you that it'd be something totally different than what really is. But I want to hear what you got to say in your translation of definition of being awake. Because
there's a scripture that says, "Awake thou that sleepest, and Christ shall give you light." So I mean, what is that? What does it mean to be asleep, and what does it mean to be awake?
Okay, you ready? Let's hear from you.
Joan says her computer keeps freezing. I've heard that from some other people, Joan. I'm sorry about that. I don't know why. You can always come back and see it later, sweetheart.
Yeah, you can. Being awake. Some people told me, said, Sawyer said, I'd like to see you go back to preaching like you did when you was back in your 20s. I said, no way. Waking up, I saw this. Give you a beginning idea of what awake is. Go back to Galatians 2:20 and look at it and identify with it literally.
Yes.
Literally. Yes. Don't put it in there as though it's something that's supposed to be interpreted from spirituality in the sense of it didn't really mean what it said. Okay, if you're going to take it like that, go in there and look. I have been crucified. That means together along with you have physically.
So if I've been crucified and
Okay.
it's not me living now,
That's right. That's
then
no
what I
you.
think is me living now is not what's living
It's
now.
not
So
a real
what
you.
I've always considered myself to be is not what's living now.
Right. And even if you don't want to believe that, I'm going to tell you something else. All I can say, the best way to find out about waking up is to investigate on a natural basis, investigate near-death experiences.
Now, Vincent, I like your answer. He said, you know you're awake when, one, little things don't bother you, and two, it's all little things. I like that. I like that, man. I like that. We can put that on a t-shirt. I like that.
When I was in my experience on the other side, Jesus taught me over investigating into eternal self how to hear and see eternal self. When I started meditating on Peter and Jesus in the discourse about who was the real Savior, who he was, I found out from that experience how to see Jesus in every person in the earth in the sense of being an eternal self.
Yes, yes.
That does not mean that there is no wind. Does not mean. I'll give you a bad example. Clark Kent, Superman. Y'all know all about Superman.
Yeah.
On Krypton, he had special abilities, and everybody had special abilities. When he got to the Earth, he was sent as a baby. He could do things in Earth like he was on Krypton. Everybody was thinking that he was Clark Kent. All right. In the movie, it's amazing how he could put glasses on
and fool everybody.
That means that if he put glasses on and fool everybody who he was, and when he took them off in their face, all of a sudden they say, well, he's Superman. Put the glasses back on.
He put the glasses on and he slumped his shoulders
too.
Yeah.
That is not enough to hide your eternal self.
Hey, Daddy.
The eternal self does not hide itself in the sense of ceasing to exist because of the lack of acknowledgement.
So I don't have to feel different, do I?
No, you don't.
To accept that this is what I am.
You could feel like a broke-neck chicken in a meat house.
And it goes back to what Vincent said, little things don't bother you and everything's a little thing.
This is something of waking up that occurs in a knowing, a perception, and seeing. I never thought, Vincent, that I would be talking like this, and you've been around us and you know us. I never thought that I would be talking about myself and the selves of oneness of every person in there. I never thought I would be saying everybody, whether they know Jesus or not, is an eternal being.
I remember, Joan, if you're still there, I remember the last time I heard Carlton Pearson in person when I was in Florida. I was there with LaTanya Black and I were down there, and he had to minister that night. And this has been years and years ago, before he ever came out with the gospel of inclusion. And he was preaching that night, and he actually said, and he said it openly, you could hear a pin drop after he said it. He said, every man is saved, they just don't know it. Man, you could have, like as you say, you could have heard a rat pee on cotton.
That's right.
Because it was mind-boggling to the minds of those who feel like we've never been enough.
The power that we have in church that seemed to come because of the music, and when the music, or because of the preaching, or because of the feeling that seemed to come and go, is based on a Luciferic principle that scholars have used from Genesis to Revelation in the Bible to verify that God showed up because I felt it, and the shout and the heat and all that. Then when it leaves, God is gone. How big a deception that could be. I mean, either he is or he ain't here, and it has nothing to do with fire, heat, and flashes, and shouting and jumping. Yes, it feels good.
Oh, yeah.
But you cannot put all your money in the bank based on that, because you're going to lose it. I'm talking about maturity. Enjoy the festivities while it's there. Added fringe benefits. But if it is not there,
Well, I tell you what, and I'm encouraging all the rest of you guys to do the same thing. I've dropped the question, why?
Mm-hmm.
I've dropped that question. I don't ask that question anymore. Why? I don't ask the question that begins with why. Why me? I don't ask that. I don't ask that at all because it doesn't matter anymore. Why? It just only thing that matters now is that I navigate through it.
Mm-hmm.
So it doesn't matter why anything happened. And so I ask. This is another thing that I don't ask. I don't ask God, what do I need to do? I never ask God, what do I need to do? Because I know if my heart is open and I'm open to hear, I'm open to be moved, to be orchestrated. I don't have to know why. My mind wants to know why and what do I need to do. So I don't ask those questions anymore. So my life is a little bit more spontaneous. It's more peaceful. It's more content. I'm not constantly trying to figure out what do I need to do to feel like I'm more or becoming something else or trying to be bigger and better. I'm not doing that. That's kind of died out. So it feels good to just live.
Our eternal self does not want power over people.
Right.
The eternal self does not come and go and lose its hold on us simply because our attention is not on it. Each of us carry the call of God through the eternal self that does not go any further than waking up to that eternal self.
You said this the other day. He said this the other day. We were just kind of talking, having a conversation. We talk all the time, just like we're talking here now. He said, God did not, we did not come here and God speak to us to try to build a career.
Yeah, that's right.
God's not interested in building a career.
That's right.
He's not interested in you building a career. I mean, you can do that. There's nothing wrong with that. And if you want to pursue, it's fine. But don't think that God is a big, what you call those people that always help people get a job. You know, he's not out trying to give you career changes and all of that stuff. I mean, those things kind of come.
The fivefold ministry, apostle, prophet, evangelist, pastor, teacher, was not meant to be used to manipulate and control people,
right,
to get them to do what the preacher or the church wanted them to do. It was not meant for that.
But it was that came into being because there had to be structure in order to have control. And so the structure is what we have trouble with now. The structure, and it's not usually God that gets upset with you, it's the authoritative structure that gets upset with you.
Group power, we call it. Group manipulation. Group control. If you don't do what the group say, you can't be a part of my club. That's exactly what happened to Carlton Pearson.
Yeah.
The groupies.
Unfortunately, but he's doing well.
He's doing fine. And I'll say it to the top line. He's doing exactly what God wanted him to do. And those of you who had problem with him, you're doing exactly what was meant to. You're the opposite.
And he has absolutely no regrets.
None
for leaving what he was involved in, for leaving the judgmentalism, for leaving the division, the holy division. That's what we've been used to, is a holy division. Here we are over here, we're God's people, and here you are over there. We're more favored than you because we're God's people. Well, we're all God's people. There is no such thing as one of us not being God's people.
When the real self comes forward into consciousness, the pure self will come to the forefront of consciousness, and when that happens, you know it. You know it, because you will not look at the Bible the same way.
You won't look at anything.
You won't listen or see things the same way. There is a freedom and a peace that surpasses all Luciferic principles.
If God is right where you are, right there in your psyche, even as your psyche, but you don't know it all the time, you cannot move toward God, because if you try to move toward God, you'd be moving away from him. So you've got to settle where God is and stop projecting that there's God way off from you, even right inside of you. And I say this, and I know it's redundant, but God's not in you like a raisin in a bun. He's not compartmentalized inside of you. He's in you like Kool-Aid in water. You can't make the separation. But we have the concept that he's in us like a raisin in a bun. So that misconception keeps us looking for God when he's right here, keeps us seeking God when we don't need to keep seeking God. We need to accept that if God's not saying or doing anything to guide us at this moment, he's saying you okay, right where you are. And if there's a situation or a crisis that's evolved, come about in your life, and he needs to come forward, he will come forward. If not, he's saying proceed as usual and use your own brain.
You are the present now presentation of God. If you want to see what God looks like, and this is really contrary to popular demand, the next person you see in the mirror will be what God looks like.
Yes. And our time is up.
Thank you for tuning in with us.
This was so fast, but we'll be back next Thursday. And we thank you guys for joining in. Don't forget to like our page and hit the donate button if it's resonating with you.
Please do.
We appreciate all of those who have been giving.
Yes. And remember, we're not here to fight a fuss.
No,
we want to present something that happened to us. And please, if you like to have us to come to your classes and talk about this without obstructions, I would be glad to.
He would be glad to. I don't know if I want to do all that.
Well, I'll do it. If she don't want to, I'll do it.
But we love you, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.